seals the Bethesda deal. So after all the checks and balances, regulator approval, lots of interest,
shady backroom dealings
from the EU, the US, Bethesda is now officially, and ZeniMax is officially part of Microsoft.
Nice.
This is actually, I know people feel like it's very slow, but this is a really quick acquisition. It's about 6 months, so September 2020 when it was announced, given that it's a multiple $1 billion acquisition. This means that Microsoft now, along with all the other sort of Microsoft first-party studios, they have id, Arkane, Tango Gameworks, Bethesda Game Studios, obviously. And from an IP perspective, it's just almost ridiculous with the Elder Scrolls Fallout, Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake, Starfield, Evil Within. It's just insane. And there's other ones that we haven't even mentioned.
Some really good, strong IPs in that, yeah.
And you know, I think they did a really great job, and we'll talk about it now, is just with the Roundtable. And... you know, jumping in straight away with exclusivity and what it means on the next platform. So, Swinny, like, you know, Phil Spencer, it was the first question he was asked from an exclusivity point of view. Number one, what did he say? And then number two, what do you think it actually means and what that translates into with games like Starfield?
So basically, he upfront said, you know, they have existing responsibilities to, you know, multi-platform titles. Whether or not they're contractual obligations before they acquired Bethesda or just support for existing games, just like the situation with Mojang and Minecraft and all that stuff. But he then essentially said that, you know, and this is a quote from him, that gamers should know that Xbox consoles, PC, and Game Pass will be the best place to experience new Bethesda games, including some new titles in the future that will be exclusive to Xbox and PC players. So now that they can talk about this stuff, because, you know, and in the roundtable are very clear that they couldn't really talk much because, you know, legally, you know, they
it would be totally illegal for them to talk.
Yeah, so so now that they were very ambiguous before, but now it is much clearer. It's not still 100% clear, but it's pretty much saying that, you know, the new titles will be exclusive to platforms that have Game Pass on it. So take that from
but not all the new titles, just some of the new titles.
That's pretty much, I think, the message from this is that these titles will be coming to platforms with Game Pass.
Well, and I thought that was so fascinating that he didn't alliterate it as Xbox and PC, Game Pass, blah, blah, blah. But it's almost like, to me, and maybe I'm going way too deep into it, but to me it felt like almost like a bit of a jab at Nintendo and PlayStation, and maybe even Apple, kind of going, well, if you want these games on your platform, let us have Game Pass on your platform.
Exactly. That is 100% what I take this from. And I think that's fair. I think that's actually a really fair kind of balance with this. I don't think PlayStation would ever allow Game Pass on there, but I could be proven wrong. But I think that's kind of almost like they could essentially, you know, I don't know if it makes business sense, but they could have these completely exclusive, not put on PlayStation, like Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 and whatnot. But that's almost like an olive branch there, you know.
Yeah,
that would also make an olive branch with leaves of money on it, because obviously, you know, if they got Game Pass on PlayStation user base, that would be ridiculous.
I genuinely couldn't imagine almost any scenario where Game Pass would be on PlayStation. That would be honestly, it'd be the most shocking game news that I'd ever have seen.
Purpose of it,
yeah.
Just from a strategy point of view, it makes zero sense. It makes negative sense, but I do see a world where it goes on Nintendo, just because the kind of games that are coming out on Game Pass, yes, there is a crossover with, you know, games that you can purchase on Nintendo's platform, but especially with the innovations around xCloud, or, you know, game streaming as it's just called now in the States, that's where, like, Nintendo, if they can get a cut of that revenue, which they would have to, you know, I could really see a world where it makes sense. Like, that's a nice complementary product for Nintendo versus, you know, like on PlayStation, it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. So I just quickly about the roundtable itself.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, this was a very, very mixed presentation for me. So they had a whole bunch of people there from, you know, from the Bethesda side and Xbox side, and I loved hearing from the studios. You know, about halfway through the roundtable, they then start covering. They go and they speak to key people from Arkane,
like
Bethesda, and id, and that was really, really good because. You know, it was almost like an internal kind of roundtable. Like they were talking so much about the internal relationships between studios, but the other part of it was just very masturbatory for me.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, this is so good.
That's one way of
Xbox is
putting
so
it,
good.
yeah.
Game Pass is so good, and I got sick of it.
You
No,
got
you
off
didn't. We all know
That was
you're
the
the
No,
you're the
oh, trust
Xbox
me.
shill. You loved
No.
it. You're like,
Hey, you project that on me. I'm not a.
hey,
at
I'm
some
not the one
point-
with green on my face cam thing.
But no, at some point I
You're
was
the one
like,
that looks like an
okay,
Xbox.
all right, this just feels just really like it's a big deal. I'm not saying it's not a big deal, and they have cause to brag about it, but it just was a bit like Phil Spencer. Outside of Phil Spencer, I think everything he said was great, but everything else also just felt super rehearsed as well. So it just didn't feel very natural. Whereas
of course.
Phil Spencer's there just feeling like the most naturally speaking person of the group, like he's not a robot, you know. But other than that, look, I thought it was good. And they also mentioned that, and I have a bit of an issue with the way they message this, but it's fair that 20 Bethesda games are now available across Game Pass.
Yes.
And pretty much so many places reporting there's 20 new games in there. It's 12 new games, but the way they messaged it was there's now 20 now available in Game Pass, which is awesome.
In total,
I'm not going to
yeah.
complain about it. So
No, that's
They
pretty
should have
sweet.
taken them
And-
off Game Pass for one day and then brought them
And then
back
put
on.
them back on.
we'll
Exactly. Yeah.
we'll cover the actual full list in the bargain bin.
Yeah.
And they're also planning to add FPS boost support for I think 5 of them.
Exactly.
Which I'm really excited about. Prey and especially Dishonored Definitive Edition, because I bought that game full price on Xbox One and was so pissed. And I didn't do my research. It's my problem, my fault, that it wasn't running at 60. I was like, why is this game not
I
running
like
at 60?
this is your quintessential example of a game that you hate that wasn't 60 and you don't
Oh,
understand why.
Dishonored is like, it's just like, man, why? You know. So if that's running at a solid 60 with that FPS boost, then it actually will get me to go back and play the game. So
And just talking about length, and you know, like we probably can't judge too much given that we have podcasts that run well over 3 hours. But yeah, the event was way too long. Like I was always going to watch the whole thing. Obviously, we talk about it on the show, but as a general punter, like it's very strange, this roundtable. It felt very inside baseball, very almost more for the games media in a weird way than even for people who will follow it on games and media, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course they should have shortcutted it, but I mean it is a huge thing.
Oh yeah.
In the industry, so I can kind of see why. And there were a lot of people involved in a lot of studios, and you can't just brush through them and go, oh yeah, and this person, this studio, we don't really care about them enough to even put them on screen. So I feel like they had to go that length, if that makes sense, just because of how many studios are involved, how many people, you know, would have wanted to talk about stuff. So it was inevitable it was going to be that
Maybe,
length.
but I still think you can make it more punchy and like really like the biggest announcements are the exclusivity stance. And I do want to loop back to it because I know we got your take on it, Swinny, but we didn't get your take, Mike, or my take. But I just felt that the biggest announcement was that, and then also, hey, we're gonna have a summer event. Which I mean, like, come on, of course you're gonna have a summer event. But yeah, that it felt like very much a 30 to 40 minute event that went for like 75 minutes from memory, which is really long for something like this. But
Yeah, it didn't really bother me.
just
I
quickly
thought it was
looping back to the
interesting
exclusivity, Mike, because I think I'm kind of wrong about it. I said that I think some of these major games will be timed exclusives. So, you know, stuff like Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, I feel like it will be on Xbox and then 18 to 24 months later it'll come out on PlayStation. I don't think that's the case now, listening to what Phil Spencer said.
So my takeout is that some stuff will become exclusive, not all stuff that as the combined studio.
Sure.
Combined studios.
But the big, let's talk about the big games.
So stuff like the big games, I don't know. I think I think in some ways they might be shooting themselves in the foot if they completely exclude all the other platforms for something like Starfield, as an example. Will they get enough, you know, sales of Xboxes and people justifying Game Pass to counteract all the losses they would make not being able to sell it on PlayStation?
Well, it's interesting when you see
I
the
don't know.
numbers, the initial numbers of what platform Skyrim sold the most on. Like Xbox 360 was by far the most, and then eventually PC overtook. So, and I don't know if part of that is because at the time, PS3, I don't think the version of Skyrim was on PS3. The PS3 at launch was very good. So I think maybe that might have had something to do with it, because I don't know. I had a feeling in that generation a lot more people had both consoles, if that makes sense.
I was just showing my copy of Skyrim on 360.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
That's
I think
a
you're
factor
right,
in it,
Sweeney.
but, yeah.
But I think one big thing, Mike, is like the halo effect it has. Because I know Sweeney hates this as the Xbox shill of the podcast, but like genuinely, and I looked at it analytically and objectively, and I just look at the Xbox One and the lineup, and I'm like, it just doesn't have games to compel me to go, why would I get it? Whereas
I was going to mention that too. It needs something.
I had a PS3 and an Xbox 360. Not that I played it that much. Like I played it a bit, but each platform had a suite of exclusive games that gave a halo to the whole platform. And I think when you have Doom 3, in terms of the spiritual reboot of the series, you have Doom 3 and then you have Elder Scrolls 6 and you have Starfield and whatever else is going to be coming out. That becomes a bit of a halo around the Xbox Series X, where you're like, okay, like that's a pretty good lineup, and you can only play it there or on PC versus PlayStation 5. You won't win on the sales of those games in particular, but do you win overall?
Well, I think it's a balancing act. It's having enough to have clear IPs that draw people to that particular platform, but also not completely alienating the market, of which there is more than just Xbox. So
I think we need to also stop really thinking about the console standpoint. Like, this is all about Game Pass.
That's true.
So I think that's what they want. They just that's why they went so hard on this dual PC.
That's a good point.
So.
Although every time you say that, the games I want to play on Game Pass are only available on console. Like, no joke. I don't know if New Vegas is on PC or not. I'm dumb. I don't know.
So
I don't think it is.
I think the reason why New Vegas isn't in Game Pass is because I think they
no, it's not on Game Pass.
PC.
For PC.
Yeah. So that's what I meant.
It is for console.
Is because I think there were probably quite a few issues with that game, and they probably had issues trying to get that on the Windows Store in its form that it's.
But you can get it super cheap anyway through.
But it sounds like it's not a good PC game. So.
Well, no, I think they just that's what I think a lot of people have said. The reason why that potentially isn't the case.
Okay.
So
I don't know. I always find it that I can't, or like I don't get in the xCloud beta program for Australia. It's like I've got iOS device.
I think it's time.
Maybe you stopped insulting them on the show every week.
Yeah, there's also that. You're probably on Phil's blacklist. He's got a little black book. I have to say,
it would be
just trolls the internet.
It'd be so funny if they did blacklist me. I wish they told me. That'd be really funny.
You won't hear about it.
No, I would never hear about it.
You just never get invited to anything.
So no, it was a good event. Like I kind of just to round it up. Like I thought it was a really cool event. It actually did get me energized for Xbox, to be honest.
It did.
Not that I'll buy one, but I was like,
One really quick thing I was just going to add before we finish the segment is what I really liked is how they touched on the collaboration between the studios. So having the events where they can showcase each other's work and where they can go to each other for inspiration. And I think that's freaking awesome. That is probably actually, out of all the things that were said, the thing that stuck in my mind the most. This really cool idea of being able to collaborate with the other studios for ideas. Work, help on the engine, of anything. It sounds so cool to be able to do that.
I've got a prediction.
Go on.
I think we're going to see Quake. Like not a Quake Legends or anything like that. I think we're going to see new Quake. I think we're going to see new Quake.
It's so funny you said that. All the way through the presentation, because I am a huge fan of Quake. I'm obsessed about Quake. I love Quake so much. And Quake's almost two series. You've got like Quake 1 and that whole kind of like style, and then you've got Quake 2 with that style, and it feels like two series in one. It's quite weird, and I love that about Quake as well. But yeah, I was like hanging for just sure, I'd still want multiplayer if it's Quake, obviously, but I just want a single player Quake experience that's of the level of like a Doom.
And I think it will come from id. It sounds weird.
You're getting me excited here.
I think it sounds weird
Quake
to say that
2021.
because you think, of course, but then, like Machine Games is doing Wolfenstein. I think it will come from id. I think that will be the next thing they do.
So, because they're finalizing the last DLCs for Doom Eternal, which, by the way, don't seem to be going that well, because everything I hear about it, Doom Eternal is quite difficult, and the DLC is just like another level of difficulty
Oh,
above that.
jeez.
Like I'm talking
It's
way
a pretty
past
hard
Dark Souls.
game, yeah.
Like
It's
people
not
are
that bad.
No,
Wow.
no, dude. People are bailing, and they're like very good at the game.
Huh.
They're like, this is freaking impossible. The DLC.
Okay.
I was reading that apparently, because I haven't played Doom Eternal, but apparently they're adding a really cool like HUD that's closer to the crosshair, and they're actually saying it's like that
Oh.
once you use this, it'll be so hard to go back. So it'll be cool to see what they're doing, like adding that to Doom Eternal. And
Yeah,
some updates.
that's actually really smart if they integrate it into the crosshair itself. Yeah, that whole series and id, we've got to talk about them one day. Like the revitalization of that studio is like one of the greatest second acts I've ever seen in a game studio. It's just
It
incredible.
really is, yeah.
Yeah, from like I know, and we'll talk about Doom 3 one day, but yeah, just the journey from that and to get to Doom 2016 is just incredible, really. But yeah, look, Microsoft, very, very good deal, very smart, very excited to see the summer event. And hopefully we'll see Starfield shortly. I think, and you know, then find out where it's going to go, and if it's only on Game Pass and on Xbox and also PC only, which would be interesting. All right, let's get into our next segment. Sorry. So much